Welcoming back to the stage, Justin Brown.
How you doing?
Can't complain.
Yeah? Well, for the audience, you are missing the 3 M's. We have the most children who've ever attended CAPCON ever in the house right now. And so,
Brian Mast. My 3 boys, Magnum, Maverick, and Major, they're in back there. They would definitely rile you guys up a little bit.
And then we have a mother with a soon-to-be expectant baby also waiting in the back. So it's...
It'd bring you back to being privates or having privates, one or the other. It's kind of what having those 3 boys is like.
Well, it's good to see you. It's been a while since I've seen you in person. I think I guess it was post-COVID, the last time we were trying to get into some good trouble and giving the Pentagon a hard time for not hosting Rolling to Remember.
That was a big fight, but you got other people to step up and say, hey, you can use our parking lot. Vets welcome. Come out here and let's celebrate the day.
That's good. Yeah, well, we certainly, AmVets appreciates your help on that front. I guess I would be interested, and I think perhaps some of our folks would be interested in hearing, tell me about Brian before the military.
Before the Army?
Yeah.
Let's see. I always use this in another point when we start talking about college pay-fors. But I say, I spent more time playing sports, chasing girls, and thinking about when the next party was going to be as a part of high school. And, loved it. Was certainly very, very capable. But I'm not going to pretend that I had all of my priorities straight in terms of putting all the focus into academics by any means.
Yeah. So
I had a lot of fun. That's the summary. I had a lot of fun.
So you're the greatest student, and you're having a lot of fun. What was the compelling reason for you? What was your why in terms of joining the military?
Well, all of that fun aside, always wanted to be in the military. Not just because of losses that had occurred in family, but I had an uncle killed in Vietnam, another uncle that served in Vietnam. My father served during Korea. All of my uncles on both sides of the family served at some point in the military. Had a great uncle that Silver Star recipient killed in World War II, and the list goes on. And whenever I get a chance to speak to one of our older veterans, I always make the point to them that it is them that made me say that I wanted to serve in the first place. Looking at you and saying what you did before I ever put on a uniform was what made me say, that's all I want to do. That's all I want to be, is just be like one of you, do what one of you did. And that was just a drive I had in me. And that was my path.
So you joined the service. Obviously, your worst day aside, I mean, what was the highlight for you?
Highlight of my time in the military? I think I'm going to take this back to Congress just for a moment, right? So I'm a member of Congress, and people always ask, is Congress fun? Are you having a good time? And I think it's the wrong question to ask in this way, because whatever work that we do, we take good and bad together. But fun for me in the military was reaching mission accomplished, right? And so to get to mission accomplished, you might have been sleeping in the field for days or not at all, or, been wet for however many days on end, got 100 pounds on your back, however many blisters on your feet, you're getting shot at, or you're getting, threat of being blown up, this and that. The list goes on and on of all of the austere conditions that exist there. But you forget about all of that when you hit mission accomplished. And so every time we hit mission accomplished, that was the fun. That was where the purpose was in being in the military. And I guess I compare Congress in the same way. It's not always fun, and sometimes you get blisters on your feet, but you forget about it when you hit that mission accomplished for the policy that you're looking for or something like that. So that's a little bit of comparison for military and legislative work.
I was in the Navy, so we had a very different experience.
Oh, don't get me started on that. So.
Certainly you run for Congress, and I think we'll get to that. You obviously have a terrible day, and one of the things that's always been interesting, or in the back of my mind to ask you, and I get to ask you that now, is what drove you in your recovery you went from, basically running for Congress during your recovery. I mean, what was driving Brian Mast during those days?
So what drove me during my recovery process, right? So I was injured September 19th, 2010. I was working out of Kandahar, Afghanistan. I was a bomb tech under JSOC, and, one too many, is the short version of the story. And I think what drove me during recovery was, two things. One, it was naiveness that actually ended up helping me out, and I'll talk about that for a second. And the other part of it was of all the training that we go through in the military to overcome, to not quit, to exhaust yourself and then continue on and get through that. Was there ever a more important time in my life to draw upon that no quit, can do attitude than when I had 2 legs blown off in Kandahar one night? Probably not. Now, the naive part for me that, sometimes at the time I feel like a little embarrassed about it, but it helped me get through it alongside of this drive. So I wake up in a hospital bed, and I never had prosthetic legs before that, and I'm laying there, I got tubes coming out of me, and naively, I'm sitting there thinking, you know what? I'm going to slap on a couple, prosthetics. I'm going to do a couple weeks of physical therapy, and I'm going to be out the door on the next rotation, 8 months down the road, back to Afghanistan with my team and that sort of thing. That was being very naive, because I would never be an asset to the mission in the way that I was an asset before. It doesn't mean I couldn't still be an asset in some way, but I wasn't going to be in the same way that I was before. So that naiveness allowed me to just commit everything that I had for, and I'm not trying to say this in a braggadocious way, but I feel like I did more physical therapy than anybody in the hospital. I would be the first one there in the morning, and I wouldn't leave until that day ended. And I would do that every single day, just trying to get out of that hospital as quickly as possible, because I was driven in part by that naive idea that I was going to get back onto the battlefield in the same way. Now, as I started to experience what it was like to actually utilize prosthetics, I quickly became self-aware that I was not going to return to the battlefield. And that's where I started to think about Congress very seriously. I'm laying in a hospital bed, and this goes back to the most important lesson my father ever gave me. So my dad and I, we love each other a lot, but we've just never been those 2 guys that went around saying that we loved each other. And I tell my kids and my boys and my little girl, I love them all the time, but it just wasn't who me and Dad were. And so my dad, he comes to my bedside. The first time that he's seeing me when I was injured, I woke up in Walter Reed, not too far down the road, and actually where I was this morning. And he comes to my bedside, and he's tearful, and he's emotional, right? Like his son just got seriously injured. But he's telling me, I'm glad you're alive. I'm glad you're okay. And if, I love you, son, and that sort of thing. And then it went back to tough love. And he looked at me very seriously, and he says, Brian, you can't let this keep you down. You got to find a way to pull yourself up, get yourself out there, get back to work. You can't let your kids see you sitting on your butt regardless of what happens to you in life, because your kids are always looking at you, trying to figure out how they're going to go out there and live their life. Your job was defending your country, so make sure that the best defense that you give your country isn't something that's in your past. And I took that very seriously. I like to think that my dad didn't have to say that to me, but he did. And it mattered that he said it to me, because I do carry it with me. And so I started to think, what's the best way that I can still defend my country, to make sure I'm not, Al Bundy from Married with Children, always talking about the last throw as a high school quarterback, right? Like, how do I make sure the best defense is still in front of me? And I decided, maybe if my community would have me, when I, because I had been military for a long time, I didn't really have the community roots, which is something a lot of military members face. But if wherever I plant those roots would have me, then I would ask to continue my defense of the country as their representative, as a member of Congress. And that's where I started thinking about it, was laying in a hospital bed.
Walk us through that a little bit, right? Because I think there is the notion that, hey, I'm going to run for Congress, and you probably jump through the initial hurdle of everybody thinking you're crazy. And maybe you are, right? And the self-doubt, right? There's got to be, some level of self-doubt that kind of kicks in there, and people that are maybe being part of that echo chamber. How did you break through that?
So running for political office is literally one of the most uncertain things that you can do, right? If you want a job, maybe you go through a couple weeks of interview process, and you talk to different people at different levels, but relatively soon if you're going to have that position. When you're running for a political office at any level, I was a candidate, I want to say, for exactly 19 months from the moment that my campaign officially began, filing the paperwork to actually run, to the moment that I actually won the general election, right? And you don't know for all of that time if all of that work is going to be successful, if it's going to lead you to that purpose that you're seeking out right there, and you don't know it right up to the point of the primary, and then you get that answer, and then the general election, and then you get that answer. So that was a very difficult part of it. But for me, being a military guy, right, I came up with that as an idea. I had a lot of time to think because I was stuck in a hospital bed for however many months, just laying there with tubes coming out of me and not much to do but sit there and think about the future. So I came up with a plan of attack. And my plan of attack ended up being about a 5-year plan of attack, and it looked like this. Okay, number one, just got to recover, right? Just got to get my body has to heal, get these tubes out of me, get out of this hospital bed. And so as a part of that, I was trying to, consume the appropriate number of calories and eat healthy foods and things like that, even laying in a hospital bed that I thought would help lead to my body recovering quicker. And then number two of that was, I had to learn to use 2 prosthetic legs so that I could get around and be mobile and ambulatory in a way that I felt comfortable doing. So that goes back to what I talked about before, in taking every minute that I could to think about, just working and getting those prosthetics to work and figuring that sort of thing out, right? And then number 3, I had not at that point completed my college degree. So I'm saying, where can I go to school? What can I do for that? So I ended up going to Harvard and getting my degree there, thinking, I want to study government and environment and economics and other things like that. Where can I go to school? So I pursued that. And then, beyond that, I said, I need to find a way to become a pillar of the community that I want to represent. This is a little bit further down the road. How can I do that? Well, I made a commitment that once I, came to my home, I was going to every single week go out to something new, just something. Maybe I'd go to an AMVETS or a VFW just to have a beer and talk to people. Maybe I'd go out to some kind of political event. Maybe I'd go to a walk for autism or Alzheimer's or, just something going on, just this pedantic drumbeat of every week going out there to be a part of the community and meet people that I would ultimately ask, could I be your representative as one of 435? And that was, kind of the execution of that plan. And after executing it, my community did say, yes, we will let you be our representative.
Super incredible story, and really appreciate you sharing it with us. When did you feel like you were actually going to win this thing?
There was uncertainty.
Yeah.
Let's start with that, right?
Yeah, sure.
Campaigns are incredibly uncertain. I was running for an open seat, but you go into that, and there was uncertain moments in this. One of the biggest moments of uncertainty, I was a bomb tech. I left the world of the military, right? Like I said, part of my plan was getting back to work and showing my community that I could still be a productive member of society. That was part of that plan as well. So I get back to work with a couple of federal agencies. I had good work. I had a good 6-figure job that would add to my retirement, and that if I left it, I had to leave it because of the Hatch Act. I couldn't still work in the federal government and be a candidate for political office at the exact same time. So that was the first really moment of stepping out there for sure and saying, all right, my wife Brianna, am I really going to leave my work, leave what could be a level of comfort for, a period of time and go towards this thing that is totally uncertain? And yes, I did it. I took that leap, which was a big leap, especially when you have kids and you're trying to provide for the future and school and things like that. So that was the first really, all right, I'm uncertain about this. Am I going to do it? Am I not? And I did that. And then as you're going through the campaign, you hit that primary mark. And am I going to make it through that primary? It was an open seat. I was running against a dozen other people. We ended up smashing them, which was awesome. And then after that, the next part is the general election, and ended up smashing the general election. And I think if I could give a lesson on all of that, I think the lesson in being able to do that was just being able to say, if you went into an interview anywhere and the interviewers, because you are being interviewed by your community to be elected to office, and the interviewers looked at you and they were looking and hoping for a certain set of answers, right? Maybe all of you could provide the same answer in part because you have similar beliefs that drew you to this place to go and seek out employment on this level. But what separates you? And what separates us all is how do we tie our personal life experiences to the data points and the things out there that we can all come up with in life, no matter where it is that we come from. And so when I was running for office, I shared frequently, this is how this relates to my experience in the military and what I saw. This is how this relates to what I lived out in this way, in a very honest way. And I think that was what really allowed the community to get to know me personally, was taking a little bit of data point that was important to back up what I was saying and tying it to a little bit of experience in a reasonably concise way. Because one of the other important lessons my father gave me was, he said, Brian, people don't always remember what you say. He said they always remember if you say it for too long. So don't sit there and talk forever.
Well, you're free to talk for as long as you want today, and you're doing a fantastic job. You and I guess, swam in some similar circles. Let me ask you this question. When I ask you, what does the term post-traumatic growth mean to you, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, post-traumatic growth to me means you take that traumatic experience and you decide, is the situation that you went through going to destroy you, define you, or make you the strongest that you've ever been? And I think that's day one military from any branch of the military, is post-traumatic growth, right? Our drill sergeants, or those in boot camp or things like that, they don't put you through rigorous situations of the moment to destroy you. They put you through those situations to prove to you that you can get through those things. That's day one military. And so I think that's the most basic level of teaching post-traumatic growth, and then saying, all right, I'm going to take whatever happened to me and I'm going to use it as a tool to make me that much stronger. Just like I would break myself down in the gym to become that much stronger, or on a run, break myself down to become that much stronger, whatever it is. And I think I would say that's what it means to me, post-traumatic growth. And one of my favorite studies out there in life, I may not be doing exactly the right justice, but have you seen the study following Hanoi Hilton, Vietnam veterans? And to paraphrase the study, basically you have this snapshot of Vietnam veterans that were POWs in the Hanoi Hilton that came home and were studied and followed, that the assumption was these guys were going to be shot out. They weren't going to be capable of anything. They weren't going to be there. That was the assumption that was made. And it ended up becoming one of the most successful subsects of individuals that you could have found anywhere in the world. You're talking about Fortune 500 CEOs, if you call people in government successful, members of Congress and Senate and vice presidential and presidential nominees and candidates. And like I said, every level of government they were in, they're just an incredibly successful group. How did they all accomplish that, being in a situation that they ate water and dirt for years on end, which kept them in a constant state of starvation, slept on bare concrete floors, again, for years on end, that they shared with rats and roaches, and living out every single day for however many years, not knowing if it was going to be their last, because their captors were utilizing torture and the threat of death as a daily game to them. How did they come out of that and be that successful group of people? And it was post-traumatic growth.
Yeah, and certainly that is an incredibly powerful subset of American veterans. John McCain, one of my professors at the Naval War College, Porter Hollyburton, who taught a course on ethics, which I thought, I don't know about you all, but I went into my curriculum thinking my ethics course was going to be rather boring. And it was one of the most phenomenal things I've ever done, is sit there and learn from a former POW about what is the right thing, and I think in no other situation would your ethics be more tested, right, than in sitting in a situation like that. Along those lines, when you back up and based on your situation and where you're sitting, and as a United States member of Congress, where do you think we're getting it wrong with regards to the VA as it relates to some of those issues, and why do we see so many service members, frankly, coming back, getting out, and frankly struggling?
Yeah, I think one place you just say, it's a common word thrown around in Washington, bureaucracy. We're a group of no BS individuals that pride ourselves in being able to cut through the BS, though we know that it's there, but it's something that our job, our safety, our livelihood depends on that in an inherently dangerous line of work that we do that's always dangerous, quite often deadly. We have to cut through the BS, and we move into a situation that is defined by bureaucratic BS at every level of it. And I think that's one of the things that drives us crazy, creates a situation where you almost walk in the door at odds, where you're at odds in a situation. And then when that bureaucracy does actually play out, then you have veterans that are unfortunately very directly affected in terms of their physical care, their mental health care, creating moments in their life that are emergency situations because of the way they are going to react to some situations at that point in life. Yeah. And so if I were to sum it up, I would sum it up with the bureaucracy.
Yeah, and I guess more from the orientation of the purpose, right? Like, I feel like you delved through all that, and I'm sure there was no shortage of bureaucracy that you had to deal with as a wounded warrior, and I imagine you medically separated, and I'm sure that was bureaucracy at its finest. Are we dealing with a broader issue of like this vast lack of purpose for many men and women that are getting out of the service, and they're not seeing it as their best days are in front of them, that they're stuck in that, I don't know, high school were the best days, but it has become the military for them instead?
So I gave that lesson that my father gave me, Brian, don't let the best defense that you give your country be something in your past. And I can say this, even as a member of Congress, right, as a member of the House of Representatives, it is damn near impossible to replicate the sense of purpose that I held the lives of my friends and the lives of my enemies in my hands, and was able to do good or bad for both. That I had very real opportunities to save the lives of my friends. I don't think as President of the United States of America or anything else that I could even replicate that level of purpose that I had on the ground in Afghanistan, operating alongside my brothers in arms. And so the point that I'm making, it has to be a goal, but it's got to be damn near one of the most unattainable goals that you can do out there, because we're in this situation that, we all join for different reasons, but I like to think that what we do on the ground, we do because of the individuals directly to our right and left. And the level of what we would do for those to our left and right knows no bounds. We would give the last beat of our heart, the last thought in our mind, and the last breath in our lungs. And we would do it without regret. How do you replicate that in terms of a purpose in life? And that, I think, is the natural, for any of us, it's a natural struggle. But there are ways to continue on in the purpose of what we did, which is what? We found a way to serve something that we believed was bigger and more important than just ourselves as individuals.
Brian, what's next for you? What excites you when I say that? Not necessarily is it a next office, it could be a next project. What excites you that's next for you?
Serving just my community without aspirations of moving to any other office. I love fighting for my community. I take the tenacity that I served in the military with, and I apply it to everything that I do as a member of Congress, and try to absolutely light a fire under any agency. I enjoy it, lighting fires under agencies that are, screwing around with people or businesses or parts of the environment of my community, because there's a part of us, right? We're fighters. Yeah. And look, I still love a fight. I oftentimes wish they would just say yes, because we're trying to bring up common sense things that shouldn't be problems. But if you want to have a fight, then we'll have a fight too, and that'll be just as satisfactory. And so it's being able to get something done. And I tell people, this back home all the time. the number one thing that I do as a member of Congress. It's not get on news. It's not even write legislation. And those are both things that we do a fair amount of.
Sure.
It's being that go-between between an individual and the VA or the Social Security Administration or the IRS or their business or whatever, and whatever federal agency is being a bureaucratic headache to them at whatever level. And every single day, we get to make a difference for somebody. I get to do what I believe is serving something bigger and more important than just myself. And because of that, and on top of that, my kids as well, right? That's also serving something I believe bigger and more important than just me. And because I believe I'm getting to do that every day, I wake up every day with zero regrets about what happened in the past, and with a reason to wake up every morning and go charging forward with a hell of a lot of energy.
Yeah. Well, Congressman, we're very thankful to have you here today. We're lucky to have you on the House Veterans Affairs Committee. We're lucky to have you in Congress, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I appreciate you all having me today. Thank you, and glad to have you all as brothers and sisters in arms. And the world, whoever in the world gets you, I don't think that they could get anybody better. I just wish they would allow you all to unleash yourselves in the way that we can. I'll end it on this, I guess, on my front. Have y'all ever seen those memes about transitioning from military to the office? Have you ever seen that? You should definitely look them up if you haven't. Like, instead of saying you're like Midas, except everything you touches turns to crap, try saying, Jimmy, I don't think you've met my expectations. Or, there's a whole list of them. But it's how I feel as a member of the military often. And if you're looking for entertainment, look that up and you'll be entertained.
Sounds good.
So, hey,
Thank you, Congressman.
wish you all the best.